Welcome, everyone. I'm Jen Rogers. We're joined by Prudential Financial's Lucian Alziari. He's Chief Human Resources Officer. And today we're going to be talking about keeping pace with skilling workers in this rapid period of technological transformation. Lucian, so great to see you. So we have all lived through radical change in terms of how and where we work these last few years. I mean, just look where we both are. What do you think has been the biggest driver of change post-pandemic? So just sort of in this recent leg, what's been driving change?
I think there's been this resettling, and this is still very much kind of in process. I don't think we've reached kind of equilibrium yet, but I think company by company, people are trying to figure out what's the best balance between the flexibility that we clearly understand employees value a lot, and then the actual requirements of the work. And I'm pleased that today's session talks about it's the future of the work. I think whenever in doubt on this topic, come back to what's the work, what's the requirements of getting the work done, because I think there's been a lot of focus on sort of where the work gets done and how the work gets done, but we actually need to get really focused on what's the work that makes a difference to companies' performance.
So when companies are looking at that, and honestly, I think it has changed a little bit as we've gotten out of the acute phase. And now we're figuring out how do we make this work in the long term? But we are still talking about office, remote. What are you seeing in terms of the trends right now in terms of what companies are actually doing?
Well, there's definitely a general trend, I think, of companies resetting expectations, probably more towards more time in the office. And I think there are some industry differences around that. And then I think there are some company sort of philosophical differences around that. So that's clearly one thing that's happening, that companies are rethinking this. I think we also need to be conscious of employees have a very clear set of preferences around this. And so I think there's actually still a little bit of a lag between where companies ideally would be and where their current employees are, and particularly future talent, what they're willing to sign up for. So I think all of those themes are still in play right now.
So as you've been dealing with this, what's happening at Prudential?
We believe in flexibility. We think it's a big part of the value proposition. And I would say for all of our guests today, you have to be driven by your business model and what are the practicalities of your business model and what do you need to do to meet the needs of your customers. So we're in a business where we've proven to ourselves that we can operate with a good mix between flexibility and time in office. We're definitely moving a little bit more towards, we believe hybrid does not equal 100% remote. Hybrid has an in-office component, that there are some definite elements of being in the workplace that are beneficial to us as a company, and actually are beneficial to employees as well. And we've settled for the moment on a couple of days a week for our hybrid employees and 3 days a week for our leaders, because we think our leaders need to be in place to lead the people and mentor our employees as well.
So let's dive into the topic at hand, skilling for the future of work. Obviously, technology is kind of what has allowed us to have these options in the first place to shake up the where we work. So when you're looking at companies, and I'd love to know if you have any suggestions for them looking to bolster their approach to learning and development to ensure that their employees are future ready for what's coming next, right? We're still in this evolution, but we know that it's not going to stop anytime soon, that we need to keep preparing. So how do we do that?
I think we all have to be honest that we're learning our way as we go along on this. And I think part of it is just having the curiosity and the open-mindedness to not get fixed, because I think getting fixed is going to actually get you stuck on this issue. So I think it's a time where technology is finally at scale, allowing us to do many of the things that we always dreamed of being able to do, but we couldn't but now technology actually enables that. Um, I think employees generally, there's been probably a lot of focus on the hard skills of technology and, the requirements of being able to work particular systems and particular kinds of technology. But in parallel with that, I think what's coming up in prominence is much more around what would have been called the softer skills, critical thinking, ability to work with others, solutions, mindset. And so I would say 3 years ago, the debate was very much about the hard skills of the future. I see the commentary at the moment being much more balanced between the two. And I think on the hard skills side, we just need to recognize that the half-life of any skill that we learn today is probably 3 to 5 years at best. So we're all going to have this need to keep on reinventing ourselves because our companies are going to be reinventing themselves as we go along.
Do you think that employees have made that mind shift that they are going to have to be constantly learning and reinventing themselves along the way?
To generalize, I think you typically have three groups of employees. You've got some who are out there ahead of you and they say, thank goodness you guys finally figured it out. We've been here all along. You've got a middle group of employees, which is generally the majority, who will say something along the lines of, I want to come along, just help me understand how. And then in any change process, there's generally hopefully a smaller group of people that it really doesn't matter what you do, they're not going to come along.
I'm not going to tell you which group I'm in. Uh, so let's talk about these hard and soft skills that you were explaining. I think uh, people understand the hard part because I feel like that's what we've always done, right? We've
Yep.
gotten technology, we learn how to use it, and then we deploy it. What are the soft skills and what are those technological advances that are going to play into that?
I think the fundamental skill that we are all going to have in abundance is just willingness to learn and ability to learn. And that will be learning different aspects of technology as it applies to our work. But I think just the general tech savvy is going to be helpful for all of us. But it's also finding this balance between technology and people, because both are going to be important elements of how we compete and win in the future. It isn't going to be one or the other. It's going to be much more of a balanced equation. And so kind of the old-fashioned skills like critical thinking, ability to communicate, ability to partner with employees across the company and then outside the company, I think those are going to be at a premium. And then one learning that I got from Satya Nadella at Microsoft was, he said one of the biggest skills for employees going forward, particularly in the world of generative AI, is going to be the ability to edit. Right? It's going to be to take the products of technology, but then bring your own perspective, your own wisdom, your own experience to make sure that you're coming up with like the right answer.
So how are you trying to make this work at Prudential? Just any sort of examples of how you're getting, employees on board with this? Because human resources, you're trying to make your employees as successful as possible. So how do you get them to see that this is the way to go?
Well, our number one job is to make our company as successful as it can be. And you make success as a company by really understanding the needs of customers and putting them at the forefront of everything that you do. So our true north is always going to be, what is it that our customers need in order for us to fulfill our purpose as a company? And then we're trying to get more and more specific about, well, what's the work that will really make a difference, and when and where and how does that work get done best in the future, and what's that best optimal combination between the advantages that technology can bring, but also the human skills that are important to us, because at the end of the day, we're interacting with customers, and customers want to have a human experience, not an overly technical experience.
I think everyone wants to know more about generative AI. You talked about the example from Satya Nadella about learning and being able to edit really well because you're going to be sent back all this data that's been
Yep.
synthesized. Then how do you make that better? But aside from that, what sorts of skills do you think are going to be most useful to workers? I mean, maybe even just to convince them. Do you think you need to convince them at all to give it a try? Are people wary or are people ready to embrace this new technology?
I think it's all across the spectrum. There are some who are very, very keen to be using leading edge technology, sometimes with visibility to some of the implications of that, sometimes not as well informed as we might wish in terms of the downsides that we've all read about in some aspects of generative AI. We've clearly got to continue to make it easy for people to learn. We can't make them want to learn, but we can create a culture where it's important that they understand they need to learn, and we make it easy for them to learn. So we've invested a lot in, for example, a talent marketplace where we're making available to all of our employees learning modules and resources that just make it easy for them to dip into areas without it becoming kind of mission critical at that point in time. So I think our employees understand that we're going to be with them along the journey, that we're going to invest in them because we always have, and it's good for us, it's good for our customers. But part of being successful at our company, and I would say at pretty much any company, is the willingness to keep learning and to accept that we are going to be reinventing ourselves multiple times during our careers now.
So, as part of that reinvention, what are the skills that you see being the most in demand over the next few years that maybe weren't 10 years ago? Like, what is it now that somebody needs to be, writing down, thinking this is where I want to get better?
Clearly, some understanding, some willingness to work with technology, and that's a very broad statement, but we're talking to a range of different industries and companies today. So clearly, we are going to be in a technology-enabled world, and I think just comfort with technology, willingness to try it, will be one skill. And some of this, I think I've already covered, that it's some of the old-fashioned skills that are sort of coming back into fashion now. So it is critical thinking. It is ability to work with others. It is having a solutions, results, outcome-oriented approach to work. And probably one other is just the ability to sort of prioritize your time and focus on the issues that are most important, because it's very easy for people to get overwhelmed by everything that's coming at them within the company, but actually mostly from outside our companies.
Yeah, it is very easy to get distracted these days, for sure.
Yeah.
So it's interesting you're talking about sometimes it's the old fashioned that works, those old fashioned skills. So uh, emerging technology, I think some people think, oh, it's just so much more intuitive to younger generations. They just are digital natives. They're going to be able to figure this out so much easier. So what do you say to an older worker who might not have, you can just say it to me, all the tech skills, right? That somebody else that's just getting out of school has. Like, what do you say to somebody that has been in the workforce for a while and could be intimidated by what they perceive as their lack of tech skills?
Yeah, I'd say just think more broadly about how you live your life. You go home, you watch movies on streaming devices, you shop on Amazon, you're very used to living your life in a technology enabled way. And some companies that we deal with as customers are better at making that easy for us versus some others. It's still a very clunky kind of experience. So bring that perspective into your work. So try out the new technologies in the same way as you did as a consumer, and remember what it felt like as a consumer when you were on the receiving end of a very well thought through experience, and let's try and recreate that for our customers. And remember what it was like when you were in a very clunky customer experience, and let's try and avoid imposing that on our own customers.
Do you think this works really across all industry? You know, technology is becoming more and more integrated really into the way we work. And I would say, obviously, no industry is immune, but are they all going to fit together in the same way, work and technology, or are there certain industries, and, you know, of course, talking about your own as well, where we'll see outsized gains?
I always come back to, well, what's the work that the company needs to do that gives it competitive advantage? And that clearly is different company to company, and definitely is different industry to industry. So many of the issues that we've talked about, for example, flexibility, I would think differently about flexibility in a business model where 95% of my people had to come to work on the front line and didn't have a choice about doing work remotely. So I think we've all got to remember the realities about our own company and what is it that we need to do to meet the needs of our customers. And so there are always these general trends happening, but our job is to take those trends and apply them sort of thoughtfully, forensically to our company, and always from the point of view of what is it that we can do here to give our company competitive advantage, because that's what we're here to do.
In terms of the competitive advantage, one word that maybe people might not think is part of that is just compassion. How does that fit in to your worldview in terms of having employees and working with them to solve for what you want to do, which is have a successful company? What role does compassion have in that?
One of the reasons why I've actually spent my career in human resources, which is not what I would have expected as a young person, but is the fact that one of the laws of nature from Lucian's perspective is that if you treat people well, you get better performance from them. And if you get better performance from people, your company will win if you're in the right kind of business model. So that to me is pretty much a fundamental truth. The pandemic was clearly a terrible experience for people across industries across the world. But there were some silver linings that came out of it. One of them was empathy is okay, humanity is okay, understanding that leaders are human beings just like everybody else, and they've got their issues, family issues that they're working through. I think that was all good for us. And frankly, I worry a little bit about some companies, I think, that are sort of walking away from some of those truths that we discovered. And certainly we regard it as a core part of our company that compassion matters, respect really matters, empathy is a powerful managerial skill. If it's done authentically. And, you know, at the end of the day, people, I think, want to work for a company that at some level cares about them and has their best interests at heart.
And just to kind of wrap it up with that, and also what we're talking about in terms of skilling and technology, because I mean, I don't know how many people think about empathy when you this new technology is coming on board. How do you introduce that, help workers, but also appreciate them on some level? I mean, is it a challenge? I mean, or do you find it easy and most people just aren't getting it?
People are people, so you're going to get the full range of human reactions and behaviors on anything that relates to changing from the status quo. It's just how people react to change. And so we've got to be good partners with them, but we've also got to create an expectation that actually this is what it's going to take for our company to win. And if that's what it's going to take for our company to win, this is what we need to do as leaders and as employees to meet the needs of customers going forward. And I just encourage people, again, think about the way that you live your life outside of work, the expectations that you have of experience as a customer, and just bring that reference point back into the way that you work. And it feels less threatening. I think also the one thing that we can do for employees is kind of give them a good sense of where is this game going, and give them time to learn the new skills, to dip into these areas without feeling like it's under enormous pressure, so that people have actually got time to make these adjustments. And if you look back over the course of our careers, we've done a number of these transitions and adjustments before. So just reminding people, we can do this. We've done it before. We can do it. We're going to do it again.
Mhm.
It's going to be fine.
And again and again. Well, thank you so much for sharing your time with us and all of your thoughts. Really appreciate it. Lucian Alziari, he is with Prudential Financial.